So I want to talk about the topic of talent. Title of the video is "There's no such thing as talent," which it is a little exaggerated. Like, there are people who just kind of right when they're very, very young, they're going to be better at certain things than other people. Like, socializing is a good example. Just people that are more naturally extroverted, they're going to have more talent than that for people from the start. But when you look at people in the long term, or people who get really, really, really good at things, talent really doesn't matter at all. I used to be an artist, and this is something that's very, very common with artists, is when you're pretty good, people will see your art and they'll be like, "Oh, you're so talented. I can't draw or paint like that." And the thing is, I went to art school for 5 years. I dedicated 5 years of my life. I was painting and drawing all day, pretty much every day for those 5 years. And then I kept doing it after I left art school for a couple years, and I was selling paintings. And to me, when I heard it, it's like almost insulting, because I put in so much work for this, and people are just like, "Oh, you're talented." They just like boil it down to this thing you're born with. It's like, no, I put in a ton of work to like get this good at my craft, to get good at what I was doing. And there's a book that you can read about this. I've listened to the audiobook myself. It is called "Talent is Overrated" by, I believe the author's name is Geoff Colvin. I'll try to leave a link for it in the description. Really, really amazing book. Basically what he does is he just gives examples of real life people over and over and over again throughout the book at how, and they're these people who are like world class, like very, very good at what they do. Like, he gives examples of very young, quote unquote, prodigy musicians, top level athletes. And in all the case studies that he looked at, and when they dug deeper, really these people, they had just put in more hours of practice than anyone else. That was all it was. That was all it boiled down to. And when people are first starting things, say there's 5 kids that start playing the piano, they all know nothing. There will be certain kids that learn faster than others. But in the long term, after years of doing this, that stuff doesn't account for anything really. The people who end up being the best are just the ones who put in the most time and are the most dedicated to what they're doing. And if it's something like a sport, obviously they have to avoid injuries as well. So if it's like a physical sport like that, there's going to be some luck involved. But I would recommend that book to anyone who, is looking to get good at something or to master something. And what I got from this book is it just helps you learn, like, get out of that mindset, like, oh, like I could never do what this person does because they have something that I don't. They were born with this special skill or this special talent that I don't have. And this book, it really teaches you that, like, no, you can pretty much get good at anything you want to. It just, you have to put in the time and the effort to practice. There's another book, I forget the name of it, but you'll hear it quoted a lot. It's very famous. And he says to like completely master something, it takes about 10,000 hours of practice, I think he was saying. And this is just like another thing. To get very, very good at something, usually it will actually take longer than you'll initially think it was. Like an example I can give is actually YouTube. Like, you look around on YouTube and a lot of these channels that gets millions of views, it can really look like or seem like they kind of blew up out of nowhere and they just had like a talent. They were just very good at YouTube and that's why it happened. But usually, like, you can click on the videos on the channel, you can sort by date, or you can click on, I think it says like oldest or something, and look at their oldest videos. Most of the time, channels that are getting like millions of views, that are very successful channels, they're usually at least 6 years old. Not always, but at least. They're usually 6 years old. And I think that the channels that become successful quicker than this they're usually studying YouTube a lot more deliberately. They're going into it and thinking of it more as a business when they first go into it. And they're very, very deliberately, like, they're studying YouTube. They're watching a lot of YouTube, studying what does well, what type of titles do well, and they're deliberately working on how they're speaking, their presentation in the video. Like, they might be watching their videos and picking apart, how can I tell this little joke better? How can I tell this story better? All types of things like this. But it takes a long time. And a lot of the times the channels that might be younger and blow up quicker, you look at them and they've actually put out a lot of videos. Like, they might be doing almost a video a day or something like that. And that's part of the reason why they were able to do it in fewer years. There was a guy's channel that I've been watching recently called Psych Hacks. It's one word. I really love this guy's channel. He's really awesome. But he was talking about how when he first started YouTube, that he was doing research, and it looked like it took on average about channels 2 years of like consistent work before they started seeing like success. So he made a promise to himself that he was going to stick with YouTube and consistently do uploads for at least 3 years, because that would give him the extra amount of time, and that would make sure that he didn't give up prematurely. Because a lot of people, actually most people, give up prematurely. So there's actually a course that I just bought on doing this certain type of YouTube. I was talking to the coach I have, the guy I bought the course from the other day. He was saying that he estimated that only about 30% of people who bought the course, it might have been less, actually did the work and like kept doing it. Like, he mentioned there was this one guy, this is what prompted me to ask him about it. He mentioned one guy who was like, he does these weekly group calls, and you can also schedule private calls with him basically once a week, like whenever you want. He was saying this guy was like, joining the calls for about a month, and then he just stopped. He just disappeared. And he said that most of the people that buy this course, they actually just give up like that. Like, they give up way too soon. And YouTube is something that takes a long time. Like, this guy was saying it takes at least 2 years. And the type of YouTube that I'm actually doing is this type of YouTube where you don't make like viral videos, you make type of these instructional videos that people search for. And with this, it can feel kind of even slower, because a lot of these videos to start ranking up in the search results can take 3 months, 6 months. I actually had a few videos on my channel. I was looking through the analytics recently. I had a couple videos, I don't know why, this is rare, but they took a year and a half to start getting views. They literally got like almost 0 views for a year and a half. The graph was flat. And then you can see right around a year and a half, the graph just started to go like this. They started to show up in the search results for some reason, and ever since then, they've just been getting consistent views, pretty much a very consistent amount of views daily, monthly, yearly. But this is a common thing. You just see people that give up too quick. And a lot of times the people that actually stick with it and put in the work, it can look like they're just more talented than other people, but really they're just putting in more work and time. The end result is more valuable to them possibly, or they have a certain personality type that just makes them want to do this. Some other guy's YouTube channel I was watching the other day, he was talking about how he does YouTube full time. He said he makes about $6,000 a month, I think, on average, but he was saying that, I don't know if he still does this, but at least when he was starting out, that he would spend like 50 to like, he might have even said 80-hour work weeks, and he was doing that for a long time, like before it became successful. And it's like, an average person will look at this guy's channel and just be like, oh, you're talented, like you're so good at YouTube. Or a lot of people will say it's luck. When it's like, no, you look behind the scenes, and this guy was working crazy amount of hours that most people aren't willing to work, and he's doing all this work with no promise of a return. Like, when you work a normal job, you're guaranteed that paycheck, like as long as you don't quit. when you start something like YouTube, you're not guaranteed anything. Like, it's possible you could end up working 80-hour work weeks for like 4 years and not make any money. I think it'd be pretty unlikely, but it is possible. And really, there's almost no such thing. It's not luck, it's not talent, it's just how much work you put into it. And not just practice but work, but you also have to be smart about it. So let's go back to sports as an example. Like, say you want to get good at basketball. If all you do is just play for fun with your friends, you're probably never going to get world class. You actually have to practice deliberately. You're going to have to practice free throws over and over and over again. You're going to have to spend time doing basic things like that. A lot of times it's just working on very boring, fundamental things. You have to do things that other people are not willing to do. And actually, a lot of times people with less talent, when they first start out, it can actually be a good thing in the long term because it gives them more motivation to try harder. And they have to try harder to get better than other people in the beginning. And then because of that, they develop like the strong work ethic, the strong love of like the practice and the grind. And then in the long term, they become the best. This is a pretty common thing also, is you'll hear people's stories and they'll be like, when I was starting out, like, I sucked. I was like the worst. And then they become the best because they were willing to put in all that work to become better. So I'd recommend that book. And I want people to just remember, like, anything you want to do, you can do it. It's just you have to be willing to put in the work. It's not about talent. It's not about luck. None of that. You have to develop the skills.